Hello, my name is SBJ, welcome back to Emperor's Path, and today we're going to be doing a third rail tutorial. Welcome back. In today's video I'm going to be showing you how I use the Peco third rail kit in order to add third rail to my layout. Now firstly, this isn't the first time that I've used the Peco third rail kit. It basically is two sets of things that you need. You need to get the Peco Code 60 track sets, which come as just a single rail, and you also need to get the Peco conductor chairs kit. I think they retail for around £6 to £10 depending where you purchase them from, and that's each. The tools that you're going to need for this are the third rail chairs, the Code 60 rail, some glue of some sort, your personal preference. In this video I have used super glue. It's worth mentioning that previously I have not used glue when doing this, but on this one I found that it was a lot easier doing glue because everything felt a little bit more permanent. You're also going to need either a hobby knife or a pair of clippers, or both, and you're also going to need a drill bit. Now this can be the form of a pin vise, which is the little hand hobby drills. The back of the packet recommends that you need a 0.8mm drill bit. I use a 1mm drill bit on mine. Please check before you commit to anything whether you would prefer to use the 0.8 as recommended or the 1mm such as I use. The reason I use the 1mm drill bit is simply because the 8mm sometimes is a little bit too snug, and what happens is you end up breaking the rail chairs faster than you can put them in, if that makes sense. So to prolong the life and reduce the cost of this, I've basically decided to go with a 1mm drill bit. Secondly, I'm going to be using a rotary tool. This is more famously known as a Dremel. Mine is an off-brand provided by Aldi, or Aldi, which is a supermarket here, and I believe it's quite popular all around Europe and stuff like that. You can purchase these for about £20 from Aldi, but you can find other brands as well. The reason I've used a rotary tool is simply because there's a lot of hole drilling involved, and when I did the first set on my layout, what actually happened was I just wore myself out doing it with a pin vise. So once again, test whatever works best for you. I've done it with a pin vise in the past, but when you're doing a vast amount of it, such as I'm going to be doing on my layout, you may want to switch to a rotary tool. Once again, check whether a 0.8mm drill bit or a 1mm drill bit works best for you. Secondly, as you can see on the back of the packet, it has some recommendations of how to lay it out. I've used this particularly for the points areas of my layout and how to lay all of the third rail out. There are some bits that I have ignored, so I use Code 100 track on my layout, and it recommends that if you're using Code 100 track, you should use the little circular bits that are on the sprue. They're basically extra conductors and they add a little bit of extra height to your third rail. I've not used any of these on my layout. I found them a little bit too fiddly to use. Those of you who have watched videos before know that I have quite shaky hands sometimes when it comes to doing fiddly bits. So I've ignored doing these, and you'll see when I'm clipping them off the sprues in a little bit that I don't use them. So personal preference. It does say if you're using Code 75 or anything other than Code 100 that you don't need these. It means that it sits a little bit lower, but to me the difference is negligible. Likewise, it says to do it every 4th sleeper. I do mine every 6th sleeper, so you have this sleeper, the last one's in, and then I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And basically I have a gap of five sleepers in between the 2 sleepers, so bear that in mind. Once again, have a look at what you would prefer. If you look at the railways, they go anywhere from 4 sleepers to some instances I've seen 8, but that is very far and few between. 6 seems to be a happy medium for me. So what we're going to do, we're going to have a look at previous SAM or past SAM, and I'm going to be drilling the holes. And what I've done on this that I didn't do previously is I have gone around and drilled out every single hole first. And the reason I've done this is because it's a lot easier to then go with the rail and the chairs and just sort of plop them in as and when. Whereas previously when I did it, I did a section, marked it up on the drill sort of as far as I could with one piece of rail, and it takes a long time. So what I've done is I've basically done every hole, so every 6th hole, so 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I've basically done that all around the layout, and if I need to drill any additional holes, I can do that, but this is going to save me a lot of time. The holes that it leaves are so tiny that you could fill those in at a later date, or when you're ballasting, that can go in there as well. And to be honest, the rail from the third rail covers all of that up. So in summary, what we're going to do is we're going to drill all the holes, or the pilot holes, then we are going to attach all of the chairs to each individual piece of rail. I've worked out that it's about 15 to 16 chairs per rail, depending on how far you're spacing these depends on how many you actually need. Likewise, how much of a bend you put on the end of each rail. So if you've got like big bends, sort of like sloping bends, you won't need as many. If you've got very tight bends at the end, then you'll probably need a few more. It is negligible, and you can sit and work out what's best for you. Once I've put all of those on, I can basically go up to the track, measure it out, make sure I've got all the holes that I need to, drill any additional holes that I may need to, and go from there. I also find it a lot simpler to work from particular parts of the layout. So for example, you'll see that going towards the bridge, going off the island section of my layout, what I do is I start from the points, because that's a much easier section for me to start from, because then I can start and they work out, so I don't end up with random little bits at the end if I went to the points. So it's a focal point and it looks really nice with one long piece of third rail on the side bit there. Okay, so I've got one of the packs out just to show you how to cut these out. As I said, you can paint these on the sprues if you so wish. That's what the instructions say. I'm not going to. I'm going to paint them once they've been installed, because they're going to get a nice big solid airbrush. So all I'm doing is I'm literally just cutting away the bits at the sides. This is a fairly sharp hobby knife, so if you've got a rather blunt one or an old one, might not work so easily. But all I'm doing is I'm literally just cutting away at the sides. Usually I would tidy bits up that I'm cutting off a sprue. However, these are so tiny that I feel it's not necessary. So all I'm doing is just cutting away the sides so that you can eventually... There you go. So, yeah, there we go. So that is the insulator for the third rail. It's a very tiny piece of kit. I recommend that you have some sort of little dish to put it in. I have the top from a parcel roller tube, so it's going to go in there, and I'm just going to cut all of these off, and once I've done that I'm going to start putting them on the rails. I will give you a definitive number of how many I would recommend to put on a rail before you attach it, because I know there are people who would rather put these in and then attach the rail. I'm not one of those people, so I'm going to cut all of these off and we're going to start on the rails. So these are the insulators, these little circles that go in between the rail and the sleeper. If you are using code 100 track, it is recommended that you use these to put them in. Heads up, I don't. For me it's too fiddly, and they look just as good without it. If you're using code 75 track, it's recommended that you don't put these on. However, as I said, on all of the track I have done thus far, I have not put these on. It's completely your personal choice. If you do, I think they're not needed. So yeah, so I will not be cutting these off. These will be going either in the bin or in some pot where they'll never see the light of day ever again. So giving you that heads up. Okay, so in this clip what I'm doing is I am basically feeding the rail chairs onto the rail. This can be fiddly, so just take your time. There's no need to rush any of this section. I put on roughly 15 to 16 and take off or put on as I need to, and I bend one end of the rail down so that that's already done, and you can either put 15 to 16 on and bend the other end down, or you can wait and sort of see if you need any more or any less. It is easy to put them on even if the ends are bent down, so you don't have to worry too much about that. So what I've done is I've put a little bit of super glue on each hole just to make it so it's easier to keep it in place. As you'll see, what I'm doing is I'm basically then lining up the rail and each chair with which hole they need to go in. Then I guide them in. Because the super glue's there, it holds it nicely in place. You do have a little bit of time and a little bit of wiggle room to sort of readjust as needed as well. On this particular section, this is where I'm working on the points area, and this is the part that goes off the layout. What I did was, because I've glued the bridge into place, I couldn't get to certain holes and I couldn't do every 6th one. So what I've done is I've put a hole as close as I could to the bridge, and then on the other side of the bridge off the layout, I've drilled another hole to put a chair in on there. So there will be a few chairs missing in this section, but hindsight, I shouldn't have glued this down, but it means that I can at least have the rail going off. And what I did was, one of these particular ones was massively long and I didn't need all of it to be on there, so I got it so that it had the couple of chairs on the other side off scene, and then cut it so that I was able to just have that nice bit going off there on the points. Likewise, I did the same thing with this long straight bit that goes off as well, and it just massively helped with trying to add a little bit of realism to this particular part of the layout. And once again, after a minute or so of having the weights on them, you don't need to have the weights on the rails anymore because they've pretty much set in place. So once I've left them for a little bit, I then move to a section and then start the whole process, start lining up the rail as I need to. As I say, starting on a point section like this means that you can have a nice long section that comes off the point, and you're not going to have like random short bits on a point section, which is somewhere that's very easy to see those bits. Whereas if you have it on a random corner or underneath a bridge, not so easy to see. And there we have it. That's doing third rail. That is the simplest way I can do this. I haven't finished my layout with the third rail. There's still little bits and bobs that we need to do. A few bits I'll mention: that when you're doing third rail and you're in sort of platform station areas, traditionally the third rail is out away from the platform edge. So for example, if you have 2 tracks going through a station platform with platform, track, track, platform, you'll traditionally have the 2 third rails sat as far away from the platform as possible, so on the other side of the track. So when you're doing that, modelling it in a station, it's best to keep it that way. Because of the nature of a lot of the electric stock that use these, you may find parts where it looks like there'd be no pickups for the third rail, but actually you find that you'll have a pickup on one end of a multiple unit and a pickup on another end. So there's usually enough that they can pick it up from somewhere along there. So a small gap because of a point or something like that is completely fair. Likewise, you can put it on the other side if you need to. The diagram on the back of the Peco packet is fantastic. It does explain the point section and the platform section bit really, really well. So this is a lot smaller than my usual videos, so I hope you've enjoyed this. If you have any more questions about doing third rail, or if you have any questions just in general about my layout, please leave them in the comments down below. Thank you very much for watching. If you've made it to the end here, then please click the subscribe button, it does massively help. Likewise, click the little like button because that also helps. And if you want to leave a comment about things that you'd like to see in the future, or any tips that you have about doing third rail or any of the bits that you do on your layout, then leave a comment down below as well. If you want to follow me on Instagram, it's emperors_path, and likewise we do have a Facebook group called Emperors Path on there where you can share all your hobby bits on there as well. Hope you've enjoyed this video. I'll be back in 2 weeks' time, and until then, thank you very much. I've been SBJ. Bye!